In this video, we're going to input a CSV file along with an Excel file, make a small manipulation to the data, and then output a new CSV and Excel file to our desktop. So to start, I put this at the beginning of most of my scripts, and this just clears out the environment over here. So I'll run it, and you'll see that'll go away. And for those of you who are brand new to R, to run a piece of code, you select the part that you want it to run, and then you can either hit run or do Control Enter. The next step is to declare our libraries, which, if you aren't familiar with libraries, it's just a way to leverage work that other people in the community have done for quick formulas rather than typing out your new formulas all by yourself. Alright, this is where we start. To begin, we're going to specify where our file that we want to read in is located, and we're going to create a variable to store that file path. So we're going to call this variable WD for working directory, and then we're going to do an open caret and a dash to set what that variable is going to be equal to. And then in our case, I'm just going to copy it over here. So this file is going to be located on my desktop. And the reason we declare this variable is just so we don't have to type this out every single time that we want to specify where to read in a file from or where to output a file, which you'll see we'll have to do 4 times later in this script. Okay, so our next step is to specify a variable for our Excel file. So we're going to call it Excel file and set it equal to our working directory plus the name of the file. And just really quick, all this paste function is doing is putting this string and combining it with this string and saying not to separate it by anything. Alright, and then we're going to do the same thing for our CSV file, except instead of .xlsx, it's going to be .csv, and instead of calling the variable Excel file, we're going to call it CSV file. Okay, the next step is to actually read in our Excel and CSV file. So we're going to create a new variable called raw Excel, and then use the read Excel function, which comes out of this library that we specified up here. And then we're going to pass in the Excel file variable that we declared right here. And then I'm just going to save this really fast just in case anything happens. And then after we define what we're reading in, we're just going to want to say view raw Excel. And let's just take a break here to show you what we've done so far. So to run it, we can either manually select our code or do Control A, which will select everything. And then I'm going to do Control Enter. Okay, so you see raw Excel popped up, and that's because we said view raw Excel. So we went through, we declared a working directory, we said inside our desktop we have a file called input.xlsx, and then we said to read in that file. So R knows that that file exists, and then we viewed it, which popped open this new tab for us to check and see what our data looked like. And you can see here we have a file with 10 rows, 2 columns. The first column is employee number, and the second column is their base salary. All right, so let's close out of all this and do the same thing for our CSV file. And instead of calling it raw Excel, we're going to say raw CSV. And instead of using this read Excel function, we're going to use a read.csv function, which is built into your base R distribution. So that should be, this function should exist without you having to declare any other libraries. And then instead of reading in the Excel file variable, we're going to read in our CSV file. And then we're going to view raw CSV. So let's run that again, and we should have 2 tabs that pop up here. One for raw Excel and one for raw CSV. Okay. And you can see it's the same data, it's formatted slightly different, but that does not matter for this video. The data is exactly the same. All right. And then we're just going to do a really quick data manipulation just so we have a different file to output to our desktop. But we'll go more into data manipulating in the next video. So here, all we're going to do is add a third column on both, or let's just do one of these files. We're going to add a third column here that will be a 5% pay raise on each employee's base salary. So we're going to create a new variable, which is going to be something called a data frame. And we'll just call this df for data frame. And then we're going to say raw Excel, because that's the file we're going to manipulate. You could manipulate raw CSV as well, but we don't need to do both here. We're going to do %, closing caret, and then % again. And then we're going to call a function called mutate. We're going to mutate raw Excel. And we're going to add a column called pay raise. And we're going to say it's equal to our raw Excel file. And then we're going to tell it which column to look at. And you'll see it'll pop up with a list of columns that exist when you hit the $sign. So we're going to say it's equal to raw Excel base salary and just hit tab. And you'll notice it puts quotes around the column name because it has a space in it. And then we're going to say times 0.05. And then we're going to say view df to make sure that it worked. All right, we're just going to run this piece of code, and it looks like everything worked out. So moving on, let's output this data frame that we just created to our desktop. So first we need to tell it where we want to save the Excel file. So we'll create a variable called Excel out. And we'll paste our working directory with output.xlsx. And then say no separators. We'll do the same with CSV. Output.csv. And no separators. And this doesn't matter, but I like to keep my formatting consistent. So recently I've been putting spaces on all of my equal signs, but the code will run fine either way. And that's probably just a nitpicky thing that I like to do. All right, last thing to do is, now that we have our output destination set, we actually need to tell the program to go and write the files to those locations. So we'll do the Excel file first, write _XLSX, and then we're going to say write data frame, and we're going to write it to Excel out, which is this location that we just set. And this write XLSX function comes from this write Excel library. And then the last thing we need to do is write.csv. So we're going to write df to CSV out. And then we're going to say row.names equals F, and I'll show you why that matters in a second. But for now, let's save it, select everything, and then run it, and just make sure we don't have any errors. Okay, so we can see in our console that it looks like the whole program finished. So let's go to my desktop and just see if it worked. Okay, so it looks like I misspelled output, but that's fine. Let's see here. Yeah, let's just fix that real fast because that's going to bother me. Okay. Let's refresh everything. Let's delete that. Never talk about it again. All right, you can see we have the input files that I created yesterday while I was preparing for this video, and then these two output files, which we just created. So let's just click on the CSV, see if it looks all right. If it'll ever open for us. Okay, here we go. So it looks like everything output as expected. The last thing I want to show you what happens if we set row.names equal to true or leave that argument out of the function. So let's close out of this. I don't know why Excel is going so slow. So this right here is a completely optional argument. By default, it'll default to true. But we'll go ahead and manually set that. And then once Excel closes, we'll run this again. Okay, there we go. And we're finished with no errors. Let's go see what that looks like. Hopefully this opens up a little faster this time. But basically, if you have row names set to true, it'll output a numbered list of all the row names over here on the side, which can be helpful, but most of the time you're probably not going to want that. So you'll just set row.names equals to false there. But other than that, that's all I have for this video. Next video, we'll go more into data manipulation,